Welcome to the Parenting Show. We are so glad you are joining us. Today, I'm Jennifer Anderson, co-host. With me, my co-host and parenting expert, Alyson Schafer. Little bit of a weighty topic.
A weighty topic. Oh, aren't you smart?
We're talking about weight management.
Yes.
On today's show.
I felt that it was a good thing to bring up because it turns out that one of the little side effects of having a pandemic and locking everyone at home is that we're very close to the cupboards. We have thrown off from all of our regular routines of how we would normally have breakfast and go off to school, and you'd have your little brown bag lunch, and when it was gone, and suddenly there's this grazing field of things, and we're feeling sorry for ourselves, and getting a little bit of a dopamine hit by having maybe more chips and pizza. And so it turns out that on average, American numbers I'm using now, I couldn't find one for Canada.
Right.
But the average American gained 29 pounds over COVID, and we're not done yet.
No, and that's the average.
That's the average. That's the average. And also I have to say from my personal practice on the other extreme, when we look at the numbers coming out of, say, the numbers from a Sick Kids Hospital, there was also an uptick in eating disorders that included anorexia, bulimia.
Really?
Yeah. So, when our eating got disordered, whether we under or overed, we messed around. You mess around with people's systems. You mess around with mental health. Yeah. And one of the things that gets dysregulated is food. And so, but for the average family, a lot of us are kind of going like, oh, the kids put on some weight. We put on some weight. And I really would like to do something about this. But there's always this worry, but how do you approach that appropriately? Because I think we do get worried that we're going to send the wrong message, and then we don't want our kids to think that now we could, have a bad body image or start an eating disorder. So it's sort of like, how do you approach it when you need to approach it legitimately, but you want to handle it in a sensitive way that you don't get some of these other negative side effects as well?
And it really has been an interesting state. For us, and we're in Ontario, one of the last to open was the healthcare and the gyms and those places where there was a lot of proof that mental health would have been helped by having those places open. And so there really was a balance of, trying to figure out mental health versus safety and protocol. And it's been a crazy year and a half.
I had just started at a CrossFit gym, and you had to do personal training before they let you join the groups. And the very first group one, the gym's closed, and then they moved it online. But because I have people who live below me, it was like I was not going to do burpees at 6 o'clock in the morning over somebody's head. So that kind of all fell off the rails. Yeah. And so it took me a while to kind of get some things in place, for way too long. And for sure I paid the price for that, So not just putting more in my mouth, but doing less on my feet. And, here I'm espousing the reasons why we need to move for good mental health. And, I figure I'm pretty enlightened and have a lot of things in place. And I had challenges with all of this too. So if you didn't have the skills and you didn't know it was kind of coming, it would just be that much harder.
Right. And that becomes an issue in itself. Having this conversation with people when you're going through it too. Yeah. And, when you see those numbers, average of 29 pounds, it's more than just maybe one family member who is going through this issue, but also how do you broach the topic without offending, hurting, upsetting somebody, and telling them that we need to start looking at this?
Yeah, I mean, I do, again, just from my counseling practice, it's more likely that a child is going to be the first one that is making disparaging comments about, their belly, or, I don't look good in this, or how do I look in this, and I don't like that, and then parents are kind of like, oh, my child is making these critical comments about their body. That's more likely to be the case than a child who's completely oblivious and a parent is worried. Or maybe the child hasn't said it out loud, but I usually say to parents, we live in a world that broadcasts messages through television, media, social media, that this is the body standard. And sadly, very few people conform to that body standard. And so there's a huge amount of dissatisfaction in how people look with filters and thises and that's and all these external comparators that are highly artificial. We really have to do some media training with our kids to say, this picture has been photoshopped. This picture, this has been taken at an angle that is very flattering. You know, this is not what people really look like, because there's these unreal expectations. And we are even seeing some changes now in the beauty industry where, you know, fat runway models, for example, they have like minimums on their weight so that they aren't projecting these anorexic bodies walking down the Victoria's Secret aisle and things like that. You're seeing full-size models showing up more in shoots. And even when I'm buying clothing online now, they'll show 2 different body sizes so that you see how the outfit looks on different body types, which I think is great. So we're getting a little bit enlightened about that. But the idea that as a parent, like if I didn't say something, they would be oblivious to the idea that they'd put on weight. I'm like, unlikely, you know.
So maybe it's more around the issue of how do you say it without creating the stigma, creating the idea that you are wanting them to be like the images on social media.
Yeah, so this is where we have to move it out of beauty and looks and aesthetics, which are moving targets, by the way. I think it's, you know, I want to make it about health.
Right.
This is about having a healthy body. And there are all kinds of fuller size figure people that are healthy. There's all kinds of little weenie bodies that are unhealthy,
right?
You know, and so this is about health and about nutrition and about your micronutrients and all those good things. And so that's the conversation that we want to have about kids, not what this external package is. But I think it is a good, you know, good conversation to talk about how that changes over time. And, you know, there are different cultural beauty ideals and, you know, you're given your genetics. There's only so much you're going to move your genetics. Like we got to open our range to what is beautiful. So I do think we have to talk to kids about that.
Okay. Question for you. We've asked 4 questions from viewers. My daughter never had to worry about what she ate. She was a beanstalk. When COVID hit, she had to stop her team sports and was at home doing nothing but watching Netflix and eating junk food in her room all day and night. She's gained weight, and I feel I need to address it with her, but she has more weight to lose and might get discouraged. I don't want to create a body image issue. It's what we've been talking about, but I wanted to ask you the question because it's almost, and I don't want to use the word excuse, but we're at a great time right now, whereas things start to open up, and because we've all been through this hibernation, is there a way to say, here, you know, maybe now as a family, we should start walking. We should get back into healthy. Can we, you know, start to cook and create healthy meals together? Is there a way that we can do that with masking some of the reason why and just being more healthier as a family as we start to get back to normal?
Yeah, I don't know how many parents just listened to that and said, like, my daughter too. Like, I mean, that really is a very common scenario. And I think instead of letting our young women beat themselves up, that if they would have had more self-discipline or more control, that they would have stayed on top of things. I think we really do have to say it's human nature that when you are bored and stressed and at home with access, you know, that the entire country underwent a phenomena, including you. So this is not personal. This is not about your willpower. So, you know, again, this self-compassion piece I think needs to be talked about. And I don't, honestly, because it happened to the entire culture, chances are it happened to somebody else in your household too.
Right.
Right? So I do think to be able to say, as a family, we should make it a family goal that we're going to get healthier between now and Christmas. Right. And that doesn't have to be this, you know, I see some families that have like competitions, like whoever loses the most, or like if you lose 10 pounds, I'll give you $100 or take you shopping. Like, ugh, like none of that is healthy.
Right.
But if you make a goal that says something like, let's try making sure that we add 1 more vegetable to the dinner plate.
Right.
Or let's see whether or not we can reduce the amount of sugary juices and sodas that we're drinking and instead try to all up our water consumption.
Right.
And that we're doing that as a family. And so, you know, how can we do that? Well, maybe we make sure that water's out at every meal, or make sure we have, you know, let's get a Brita in the fridge and see if we can empty it every day or whatever.
Right.
So, you know, they even have cups that like tell you to sip and drink, like they have timers on them.
No. Really?
Yeah. Like the way, it kind of like Fitbits tell you to walk. This thing says, sip your water, sip your water. Oh,
Yeah.
I would need that. Yeah. So, thinking about like maybe putting more fruits and vegetables sitting out on the counter and literally bringing less junk into the house. It's kind of hard to complain to a child that they eat nothing but chicken nuggets, and it's like, well, who's buying the chicken nuggets? Who's buying the potato chip? Like, if they're not in the house, it takes a lot more. Yeah, it takes a lot more energy to like take your allowance and go to the corner store and buy a bag of chips. And I guess if you're that motivated, have at it. But if you feel, I really believe that a lot about healthy eating is really about modeling, like, what is in your cupboards. Right? What's in your grocery cart? Like, what's on your counter? So if you model healthy eating, if what you bring into the house is healthy, that's what your kids are going to kind of think is the standard.
Right.
And, I know some families who, like, they don't cook, and their houses just take out food and good food boxes, which are at least healthier. But it's unlikely that these kids, if their parents don't cook, it's very unlikely that these kids will take up cooking. Because how would they wouldn't have learned at the feet of a parent. So I think it's very much the same about what a healthy plate of food looks like.
Right. You mentioned rewards, and that ties into this question.
Yeah.
My husband offered my daughter a new wardrobe if she would exercise every day and lose 10 pounds. I think his intentions are good, but how do I explain to him that this is a really terrible idea for self-esteem and body issue?
Yeah.
Body image.
Yeah, I think part of trying to get a parent to understand how that might land is to don't think about it as a parent-child relationship. Think about some other relationship where it'd say, well, so imagine if it was your boss, and your boss said, if you do this, you'll get that. Can you feel how there might be this feeling of like little invisible strings? Can you see how the power structure might change that dynamic, that it now becomes an expectation that somehow you're being told that the way you are right now is not okay.
Right.
So I think they have to kind of like step into the mindset of the child and experience being on the receiving end of that. And if you can get them to kind of walk through how that might feel, then they can go, oh, yeah, I can see how that would sound like I'm not happy with the way they are. And that the goal kind of says, I don't think you would do it without an incentive. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't care enough about it. I have to incentivize you to do the right thing in life. It's demeaning, right? It's demeaning. And so for those reasons, and I think he doesn't say how much weight or whatever. I think it's a personal choice. You and your health and how you feel in your skin and your psyche it's a personal choice.
Right.
And if anyone's going to make an external conversation, if you really have concerns about it from a health perspective, if you think they're becoming pre-diabetic or early childhood obesity is an issue in our country, that's really a medical situation, and that's why I think that's better to speak to a nutritionist. I think it's better to speak to a family doctor. But even then, when you speak to a nutritionist or a family doctor, they're still going to put your whole family on a healthy eating regime.
Right.
But that's the same with if somebody has anorexia, I don't want to see just the anorexic. I want to see the whole family. And not just because of what they're serving for dinner. I want to know what's going on with all the family relationships, because often some of this disordered stuff has a relational component to it.
Yes.
And
enabling.
Yep, and enabling, absolutely. Or or rebelling or getting noticed or avoiding, or there's a psychodynamic piece often that comes with this. And if you don't see the relationships, then you're missing part of the puzzle.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the opposite side? Because I know that you and I have both struggled with weight over the years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and mine started well before I ever met you. But when I went through puberty as an adolescent, as did my mother and as did my daughters, and it's a tradition. It's a fine tradition in my family.
Yes.
That when you go through puberty, you go like that. And usually in about 12 months. It's just all comes at once. Just whoa!
Right.
And so that was terrible. That was terrible for me. And so the good side of it was I learned early about how to eat healthy, because I had to tackle that in high school. So for most of my adult life, I actually learned a lot more so that I could manage. I think it's a lot harder for people that never really had a weight issue, and then maybe they had their first baby and they're like, I don't know the first thing about how to eat healthy and
what is going on.
Yeah. And so the same, when I've had like a leg injury and couldn't exercise or whatever, and then of course going through menopause now, and a pandemic. That's not healthy.
Right.
So I got the hormones coming out the other end. So so that's much more of a challenge now for me too. So
Right.
I can't wait to get back to regular routines for sure. And then you had a huge drop.
Yes. Over the last year, I've lost almost 50 pounds.
That's amazing.
But it is amazing, and I am proud of it. But I have found there are a lot of interesting things that I've learned over the last year.
Share.
Well, it's amazing to me how many people have an opinion, and so and the opinion, the compliments are lovely.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who talk about diet culture and talk about my reasons behind it without knowing my reasons.
Yeah.
And when you're 45 and you're heavy and you can't walk up a flight of stairs without being winded, and you're pre-diabetic and you're snoring now, and all of those things have led to a significant loss. But at the same time, you have a daughter who is a teenager and going through body image and self-esteem and all of those things, as all teenagers do. How do you balance between losing the weight, but showing her that it's for the right reasons,
right,
and it's doing it the right way? It took me a long time to lose the weight.
Well, yeah.
Actually, a year this week. It was a year.
Yeah, so I think that's an important thing for young people to learn.
Right.
You didn't put it on quickly.
No.
You're not going to. The slower you take it off, the more likely that it's going to be a weight loss that is sustainable. Mm-hmm. Often people find it's easy to lose weight; it's hard to keep weight off. Yes. So it's the doing it to lifestyle changes that you will sustain forever. That's the hope, as opposed to I'm going to just eat cabbage soup for 3 weeks to fit into this wedding dress and then go back to my regular eating. So, I'm sure that you modeled, knowing you. I mean, you didn't tell me what your diet regime was, but I know how you vet information, and that you're a smart woman.
Right.
So I'm sure she would have seen you just, making a good choice around it with the way that you proceeded.
Yeah, and I think, I chose to lose weight through counting points. For anybody who can figure out.
Yes.
Yeah. And I am never going to be that person who would go into a restaurant and have a salad while my family has a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
I'm not that girl.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, it took me a long time, and it took me a long time to figure out the balance of being able to still enjoy.
Yeah, if I'm going to have part of the burger.
Indulge.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's been a balance. Yeah. And so, but, for a lot of people, there's a lot of people who, they don't want to. I had somebody last week say, I didn't want to comment on your weight loss because it makes me sound like I didn't think you looked good before.
Well, and even when I said you're looking great, even as that came out of my mouth, I thought, that's actually right there laden with, it's better to
a bag of dirt last year.
Yeah, yeah, which is not what I mean. But I mean,
no.
the fact that people are talking about it's on people's radars. It's hard to say. You must move upstairs so much faster now, Jen. Like it's hard to acknowledge hard work. But we just have to be, to your point, it can't be all, And
I'm sure there are people that feel that way. I don't feel that way. Yeah. I don't feel like people are knocking it past. Yeah. They're congratulating a success, a current success, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So has your daughter, I'm interested, how did it actually land with her?
Well, I think it's like, and I think she is like, everybody else who, is at that age, right, where you question and you compare, and and so now there's an opportunity for us to eat healthier at home, but also to go for walks and to exercise, because I'm not good with athletic.
Did you say the A word? Athletics?
Yeah.
Well,
so
you know what?
Being able to do that together has created a different opportunity too for the future for us.
Well, I would want you to have good heart health, my friend, as I want you to have a long life. But I can tell you that people pay far too much attention to the output, and when they actually look at the ratio of how much you burn versus the quality of what you ingest. The quality of what you ingest is like 80% of how things are going to go.
Yeah,
so.
And when you have to change everything, you start with one, and now we're going to work on the other.
Yeah.
So,
but, we're creatures of habit too. Again, I work with an osteopath, and small things, like getting rid of dairy and gluten and things that I've done to balance my hormones, and And you think in the beginning, like, what? I can't live without that.
Yeah.
And you know what? After you learn a few little things, you know, you get used to the taste of oat milk. I didn't like it the first time I drank, but now I'm like, my palate has adjusted. I'm totally fine with that. That's easy peasy. Almost every place has it as a substitute on a menu. Like learning is one thing, but once the adjustments are made, it's not all hardship.
Yeah. Hardship is being on a show for 15 years and seeing repeats. So if you ever want to, head down that rabbit hole and check out YouTube and our previous shows and
no,
it's amazing.
I'm the same. What year was that? Was that when I weighed? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Oh well, so we live and grow.
All right, back to a question.
Shrink and expand.
That's right. My son is 12 and a big boy with love handles. I think he's going to shoot up and get tall, so I'm not concerned, but he beats himself up and thinks no one will like a fatty.
Oh.
How do I stop this negative self-talk?
Oh boy. Well, I think she should educate him for sure about the very true fact that his body is going to change a lot as he grows. Yeah. And when you're young, the science seems to say you don't really put on muscle until you finish growing. Right. So when they start watching all these TV shows and just the way girls have body image issues and they think they're supposed to have the thigh gap, boys also watch social media, and they can be just as vain as girls. There's eating disorders in men as well. It's not just a girl thing. And they think that they should have a six-pack ab.
Right.
Well, you're not going to have a six-pack ab when you're 12. I don't care how many times you go to the gym. Your body is not there yet. So you have to finish your height before you can lay down muscle in this way. And you do kind of grow out and then up and out and up. And so I think that we do have to help kind of normalize what that process is going to be. Now, we can also talk about healthy eating, and see if that's all going well. But it's the ridicule of the other people where we really want to teach our kids to say, there's always going to be someone who's going to make a judgmental comment. It doesn't matter if it's like you got buck teeth or four eyes or, whatever. If they're making rude comments, that says more about the other person than it says about you.
Right.
And in fact, you have to be an interesting enough person that they're even going to put the energy out to say something anyways. It's interesting. Why waste your breath? Is that about that person looking for status, or is that actually sometimes joshing around? Is a weird way that people get connected. Teasing can be a way. I don't think it's not healthy, but I think we can help kids understand.
Yes.
Could it be that when he body checks you and insults you and whatever, that is boy horseplay? I'm not saying it's great. I'm not behind it. But if the motivation there is, could it also be that's them kind of inviting you into the joke? You're the brunt of the joke, but it means they're trying to connect with you in some way. There could be a kindling of a kind of like we were talking about frenemies in a previous episode.
Yes.
Could it be that there's actually something there where they're joshing you and they don't know that it's hurting your feelings so badly?
So how do you change the narrative for that? Because you want that connection. So if that is their intent, it's just going about it the wrong way. So how do you shut down?
Yeah, I mean, when we're training our kids, training them how to react and respond to comments like that, and you have to check it out with your kid. What would feel comfortable for you in that moment? Do you want to say something like, hey, that's not very funny. I'm actually pretty sensitive about that.
Right.
They might say, like, I would rather die than say that, mother. Boys never say, But so another kid could say, yeah, actually, that I want to say that. That feels comfortable to me. That's exactly. Yeah. Other people, I would say, you could teach them how to, like, let it roll off their back. So if the person's trying to like egg you on and get your goat, how can you let them know that they didn't get your goat? And so come up with some neutral comeback line, which is like, well, it'll keep me warm in the winter anyways, ha ha ha, something like that.
Yeah.
But what you don't want to teach your kids is if somebody throws a bomb on you, you don't retaliate with a bomb back.
Right.
You don't, then, if they're going to make fun of your weight, then you're going to make fun of their hair. Like it's not, somehow parents want to coach their kids on, well, if he punches you, then you punch back. And it's like, no. We're not going anywhere for teaching our kids violence. If you don't want them to insult you, then how can it ever be right to say, then you insult back? If the behavior's wrong, the behavior's wrong.
Yeah.
So coming up with some kind of a comeback around that and helping them to just change that dialogue that, no, it's fine.
Right. There is one more question here.
Okay.
We've kind of covered it. It's my kids eat kid food, chicken fingers, french fries, spaghetti, grilled cheese. When I make healthier options like a Caesar with grilled chicken, they turn up their noses without even trying. How do I get them to move to a healthier palate? We talked about this,
Well,
but just with a few minutes left,
Yeah.
are there tips that families can take with them to kind of promote that healthier lifestyle?
Yeah, I'm just saying this is like the same with pick your eating.
Yeah.
You know, the parents are all like, well, if I don't give them their junk food, they're going to eat nothing. And I'm calling them out on that. I'm just saying, if it's a choice between the kale Caesar and the chicken fingers they like, they're always going to go for the chicken fingers. Don't make the chicken fingers.
Right.
Say it's only this tonight.
Yeah.
So I think we have to limit. We need to limit the access to that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it could also be, again, if you do it as a family, where you start saying, you know, we need to eat healthier. People are not eating vegetables. Let's do vegetable of the week. And whatever the vegetable is, and then serve it a bunch of different ways, because some kids don't like them raw, some kids don't like them cooked, some don't like them pureed, some like them in chunks, some like them in a casserole, some don't, you know. Keep trying it in different ways so that it becomes like a little bit of a fun, you know, chefs in the kitchen adventure around carrots. And, you know, like, let's face it, I've had eggplant that's awful. And I've eggplant where I can't stop eating it.
Right.
So we just want to show diversity and continue with exposure, and, you know, whatever, make it salad bowl of the week. And if you get the kids in the kitchen cooking with you and creating with you, that gets really fun too.
Don't you love when your kids come home from a place and they go, hey, here's what I had, and you're like,
You never eat that at home.
you had what?
Yeah.
You ate what?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's great when you look like a perfect child
Then you're like, so
at
then
somebody else's house.
You're so good at making those. Can you make smoothies for the whole family? You are the star at those smoothies. I could never do your recipe. You have that mastered.
Yeah, very good. Speaking of mastered, lots of great information on your website.
Thank you. Oh, yes. Oh, thank you very much. Yes. And always updating it, so people can surf on over to AlysonSchafer.com for blogs and videos and upcoming events. My podcast is there.
Well, and that's right. You do so much on all social media, online podcasts, but I always tend to direct people, because once they get to your website, it directs them to all those different areas.
It's the clearinghouse. Yeah, and then you can decide how you want to, whatever, follow or consume me.
Yes.
Speaking of which.
Yes. So not only can you find topics, a lot of information by topic on your website, but if you go to the I just said, don't go to the Rogers TV
No,
YouTube.
do go.
Well, I said not to, judge the stages. But head to the Rogers TV YouTube channel, because there's lots of previous episodes, and those are all by categories as well. And of course, your books are on the screen right now for everybody to see.
Buy those.
Buy those. Lots of great information. So we've given you all the tools, not only about weight and weight management for kids and families, but also all the great places to find Alyson after you're finished watching the show. Thank you.
Thank you, as always.
Yes, it was great to see you. It was great to see everybody. And we'll see you next time on The Parenting Show.